What if the secret to transforming your life wasn't a massive overhaul, but a series of tiny, almost invisible changes? The science behind atomic habits reveals that small, consistent actions can produce extraordinary results, and the proof is in the psychology. In 2013, British cyclist Bradley Wiggins made history by winning both the Tour de France and Olympic gold in the same year. His teammate Chris Froome repeated this feat the following year. The British cycling team, once a laughingstock with only one gold medal, became a global powerhouse. The secret wasn't a revolutionary training regimen or high-tech gear. It was something far more mundane, the aggregation of marginal gains. Performance director Dave Brailsford broke down every component of cycling, from tires to pillows, and improved each by just 1%. The result was a compound effect that turned a mediocre team into legends. This story, popularized by James Clear, encapsulates a powerful psychological truth. Small, consistent changes, repeated over time, produce extraordinary results. But is this just a motivational platitude, or is there robust science behind it? At the core of atomic habits is automaticity, the ability to perform a behavior with little conscious effort. Psychologists define a habit as a learned, automatic sequence triggered by a specific context. When you first learn to drive, every action requires deliberate attention. After months of practice, these actions become seamless. You can drive to work while listening to a podcast and barely remember the journey. This shift happens because the brain's basal ganglia takes over from the prefrontal cortex, freeing up cognitive resources. The habit loop, cue, craving, response, reward, is not just a metaphor, it's a physical process. Research using fMRI shows that as behaviors become habitual, willpower becomes less active, and automaticity takes hold. This is why small, repeated actions are so powerful. They rewire the brain for efficiency. One of the most surprising findings in habit research is that willpower is a poor predictor of long-term change. A landmark study by Wendy Wood tracked daily behaviors of university students and found that habits, not intentions, were the strongest predictors. Students who intended to exercise often failed, while those with consistent routines, like going to the gym at the same time every day, succeeded. The key variable was context stability. This is where atomic habits shine. By focusing on tiny changes, like putting running shoes next to your bed, you alter the environment to make the desired behavior the path of least resistance. This principle, known as friction reduction, is powerful. A study found that simply providing a short, immediate reward for exercising increased gym attendance by 51%. Small rewards lower the psychological friction of starting. The central metaphor of atomic habits is compound interest. If you get 1% better each day, you'll be 37 times better after 1 year. While mathematically true, the psychological reality is more nuanced. The compound effect works not because of linear growth, but because of systems that enable further growth. Each small improvement builds on the last, creating a feedback loop of success. This is why focusing on tiny changes is so effective. They are easy to start and maintain. Over time, these small gains accumulate into significant transformations. The key is consistency, not intensity. By making small, daily improvements, you create a momentum that propels you forward. This is the science behind why marginal gains lead to monumental results. James Clear argues that the most effective way to change habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. This is grounded in self-determination theory, which posits that intrinsic motivation arises when 3 needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. By framing a habit as an identity, I am a runner rather than I want to run, you satisfy the need for competence and autonomy. You're no longer forcing yourself. You're acting in alignment with your self-concept. This identity shift is supported by research on self-signaling. A study found that when voters were asked how important is it to you to be a voter, they were more likely to vote. The question reinforced their identity, making the behavior automatic. While atomic habits are powerful, the framework has limitations. Critics argue that not all behaviors can be broken down into tiny steps. Complex goals, like learning a new language or building a business, require more than marginal gains. They need strategic leaps. Additionally, the focus on small changes can overlook the role of motivation and emotional states. A person struggling with depression may find even tiny habits overwhelming. The science also shows that context stability is crucial, but life is often unpredictable. When routines are disrupted, habits break down. The atomic approach works best in stable environments. Despite these limitations, the core principle remains valid. Small, consistent changes, when applied correctly, can lead to significant transformation. The habit loop is not just a concept, it's rooted in brain science. The basal ganglia, a deep brain structure, plays a critical role in procedural learning. As a behavior becomes habitual, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, becomes less active, and the basal ganglia takes over. This neurological shift explains why habits are so efficient. They free up cognitive resources. Research by Anne Graybiel shows that the basal ganglia encodes patterns of behavior, making them automatic. This is why small, repeated actions are so effective. They train the brain to respond automatically to cues. Understanding this neuroscience helps explain why atomic habits work. They leverage the brain's natural tendency toward efficiency. So how can you apply atomic habits today? Start by identifying a tiny behavior you want to adopt, like doing one push-up or reading one page. Make it so easy you can't say no. Then, attach it to an existing routine, a technique called habit stacking. For example, after you pour your morning coffee, write one sentence in a journal. This creates a cue that triggers the behavior. Next, design your environment to reduce friction. Put your gym bag by the door, or keep a book on your pillow. Finally, celebrate small wins. The reward reinforces the habit loop. Over time, these tiny actions compound, transforming your identity and your life. The science is clear. Small changes, consistently applied, lead to extraordinary results. The science of atomic habits shows that small changes, when repeated, can reshape your brain and your life. If you found this valuable, consider exploring how tiny shifts can lead to big transformations.